Hello, it's Mod Sky, and I'm a weeb. um, that's actually not what this video is about. Um, the headphones just have a really good microphone on them, actually. This video is going to be a bit more serious, but if I don't make jokes, I'm gonna cry. So, there we go. This video is going to be on why I left the religion, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the situations surrounding it and my waking up process. This is not an easy story to tell. This is some shit that I'm still working through. So, yeah. I guess I will begin at the beginning. I don't, well, okay. Heads up, there is going to be mentions of child abuse in the video, which is where we'll start. When I was a young girl, my father did not take me to the city to see a marching band. However, I was abused sexually by a distant family member. Now, I have a very large family and we're all very close knit, so like first, second, third cousins, great grandparents, all of those were all like, we know what's going on in each other's lives, we stay in contact, all that fun stuff. So, although it was a distant family member, they were still pretty close to our immediate family. And frankly, I thought it was normal. I thought what was going on was normal because I was 5, between the ages of 5 and 7 when this happened. And you don't really think to give a 5-year-old the talk, or the stranger danger talk, or the no square talk, because why would you expect a kid who has been around no one but people you trust their entire life to go through something like this? It's not something that would usually cross your mind, but unfortunately it did and does happen. So, for years, I wasn't particularly bothered by it. Mostly because, again, I thought what had happened was normal. I had repressed it. A whole conglomeration of shit. But around 9 years old, um, there was a talk at the meeting where they talked about fornication and pornea. And they specifically mentioned that even if, that they knew extramarital sex was wrong, but if someone, touched you and you didn't say no or you touched them, then that was also just as bad. And Jehovah would hate you, and he hated that, and you could just get disfellowshipped. Now, as a 9-year-old, I didn't understand the concept of you could only get disfellowshipped if you were baptized. So I thought, at 9 years old, I thought that if I told what had happened because I did not say no, that I would be disfellowshipped from my whole family at 9 years old. And the unfortunate reality is, given that there are children baptized at 9, 10, 11 years old, there are children who are disfellowshipped at 12, 13, 14 for stuff probably exactly like this. I was not baptized, though. I didn't realize that the disfellowshipping rule didn't apply. So I didn't talk about it. I thought it was my fault. I was the bad guy. They taught that women tempted men into sexual immorality. And I thought that 5-year-old me caused it somehow, that I asked for it, that I didn't say no, therefore it must have been my fault. The witnesses don't teach consent. They brush over it quickly. But the consent is always conditional. If you don't scream loud enough, if you don't say no hard enough, well, if you let him kiss you, if you let him touch you, and he forced himself on you, then obviously it's your fault. Because you started this in the first place. You tempted him. You wore the short pants. You wore the low-cut shirt. And it affected me. Between the abuse and abuse I was facing at school for behavioral problems associated with trauma, I was heavily bullied. I was a weird kid. I'm not gonna lie about that. I was a weird kid. But looking back now, these weren't unusual behaviors. Well, they were, but given the circumstances, I was hurting. And on top of that, I was being bullied at school, and that led me into a very early depression. The first time I ever thought about killing myself was in 5th grade. That would make me 10 years old. And then to go in the Kingdom Mall and hear that killing yourself is a mortal sin, that Jehovah would hate you if you did that. That made it worse. Because there was no escape then. There was no escape from what I was feeling. No way out of it to where Jehovah would love me. No way out in which I place the love of Jehovah on the same level as the love of my mother, because my mother loves Jehovah. But if I made Jehovah hate me, then Mom would hate me too. This was child logic. I'm gonna cry. Okay. Okay. But I didn't leave. Because I was 10, and at that age you're still following in your parents' footsteps when it comes to religion. So I still believed in Jehovah. I still believed in everything that comes with the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's a doomsday cult. It is. And part of the doomsday cult is that they believe in a great tribulation that's going to destroy everyone who isn't a Jehovah's Witness and the bad Jehovah's Witnesses. So if you're in the religion and you've messed up, you will die at Armageddon. From the time I was 9, I was convinced that I was dirty, that I was a whore, basically, for something that wasn't my fault. I thought I was a bad Jehovah's Witness, so I would die at Armageddon. And the only way out of that for me was they teach that basically the powers that be, the world leaders, will turn against all religion, but especially the Jehovah's Witnesses, and that they will get you and they will try to make you denounce Jehovah. And I had these daydreams of I was going to prove to Jehovah that I was a good Jehovah's Witness after all by not giving up my religion, even when they tortured me. As a 10, 11, 12-year-old child, I daydreamed about being tortured by the government and not giving up a cult so that God would like me. Let that sink in a minute. So, I'm damaged by this point. I'm suicidal, have been since I was 10. I am, and this went on for years, many years, to when I'm 16. I moved from my old town to a new town. And this is when I started waking up because I got access to the internet. Oh, yes, I lived in what we in the Appalachian Mountains call a holler. 30 minutes from civilization and no internet access. I mean, it's banjo territory. So I moved into cow territory instead and got the internet. So I started doing research. I looked up the Wikipedia page for Jehovah's Witnesses because they don't like you to do that because there's this little section called criticisms. And I read those and I'm just like, I shouldn't be reading this, but at the same time, is that really what they're saying? So I did some digging on all this fun stuff, and at the same time, I was coming to a realization that I may not be as straight as I thought I was. I identify as queer, and I know there's a lot of debate against this word. That's just why I identify as. Take it what you will. It's just easier. I realized that I like girls. When I went to a convention, now a convention is a 3-day gathering of all Jehovah's Witnesses, and I saw the most beautiful woman I ever saw in my life. I died a little inside because I had a panic. I'm like, oh crap. Gay panic. I had a hard gay panic. And I talked it out with one of my friends. And I just kind of come to accept that, yeah, I liked women. Which was even harder on me and my mental health. Because not only was I a dirty whore for being abused, but now I was a dirty gay whore. I was a homosexual. God hated me. God hated my attraction to the same gender. And I let someone touch me and ooh, double whammy on that. And during that same convention, we got this book. It was either that convention or the next one. We got a book that was basically everyone in the Bible that was like a good example. Um, Isaac, Abraham, all those people, Delilah, not Delilah. Delilah was bad. Samson, people like that. And every Thursday night, I would sit in the Kingdom Hall reading this book and thinking how I could never be like those people. That because of who I was and what had happened to me, that I could never, that God would never love me, that God hated me. At 16, I thought God hated me. I knew I was going to die at Armageddon. And I prayed to God for my mother to forget me when she reached the paradise. I prayed every night for months that my own mother would forget about me so she wouldn't hurt. There it is. I prayed to God to fix me. to make me right, to forgive me. I begged him for forgiveness for something that wasn't my fault. I begged him to make me straight. And obviously he didn't. Obviously. And I just became disillusioned with the whole thing, really. I wanted to kill myself hardcore. I was ready to die. That was the point. I formulated the plan that when Armageddon came, I would kill myself so that God didn't have to. To spite the MFer, I guess. Eh. Mm. And then there was a lot of pressure for me to get a Bible study or accept a Bible study from another lady in the congregation. And I did because they literally would not shut up about it for months. So I did. And we're going through the not learn from the great teacher, the What Does the Bible Really Teach book, which is basically the cult introduction manual. And there was some parts in there that my study leader couldn't make me say. And that pissed her off. And that pissed me off because it was mostly the part about abortions, and wherever you stand on it, that's your business. I'm not getting into that into this video. The blog's not about that. Okay. However, she wanted me to say that if a friend come to me and was pregnant and asked me if they should get an abortion, they wanted me to say, don't get the abortion. And, or, read from the Bible, tell her what God would want her to do. And my answer to that was, that ain't none of my business. That ain't none of my business. That's her business. That's her body. That's her business, her relationship with God. I could tell you what I would do. I can't tell her to do, something with her uterus that has nothing to do with me. So, and she kept trying to pin me down on this answer, and mine was none of my business. So finally, she said, now I have two cousins. They're adopted. Keep that in mind. Their mother was in prison. Actually, a really nice lady, just got caught up into some things shouldn't have. Anyway, she said, well, what about the girls? What about the twins? What if their mother had had an abortion? So I was stuck in a catch-22. Either I say what she wanted me to say, or I sounded like a soulless bitch. I chose the latter to spite her. That, and it's the honest truth. I told her it wouldn't affect me because if they had been aborted, I wouldn't have even known about their existence. And it sounds harsh and it sounds bad, but it's the truth. How can you care for something or someone who you don't hypothetically know at that point? So she got mad, called the study, and I went home mad. And I was just really mad that she tried to pin me down and that she had tried to manipulate me into an answer. You emotionally manipulate me into this answer. So that was part of my wake-up call. Now, mind you, I'd been growing more disillusioned with the religion, so I was backing out of it emotionally. I didn't have the same connection. I didn't want to make it to paradise because I felt like I wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. I could never be what they wanted me to be. It wasn't worth it to try to make it there in the first place. A forever nap didn't sound that bad, really. Death would only hurt for a moment. I get a indefinite nap out of it. I was like, okay. Mind you, I was suicidal at this point. So, that was part of what really started jerking me out of it. Started like, oh, that ain't right. And then there was the infamous Toni Morris hot pants comment that really helped. So basically, if you aren't familiar with Jehovah's Witness and Jehovah's Witness apostate news, the Toni Morris hot pants comment was when one of the governing body or popes is, I guess, the closest comparison of the church did this annual talk. They put him up on a screen in the Kingdom Hall. He's giving a talk and he says, "Now, men, the homosexuals in the fashion industry," and I'm paraphrasing here, "want you to wear tight pants so that they can see your junk." There was a bit more to it, but that was the gist. And I'm sitting there like, what the fuck? I'm looking around, I'm just like, is anybody else hearing this? Okay. I about burst out laughing. I'm like, it was so homophobic. It was so out of left field. That's not what the talk was even about, but okay. Now, mind you, 10 seconds later, he says women shouldn't wear yoga pants because men might stare at your ass, and that's your fault. So, at this point, I'm just like, I'm out. Just flummoxed. So at the study, I had a study the next day with the lady. I brought this up to her. I'm like, yo, did you hear this? Isn't that really homophobic? Like, and she has the balls to look me in the eye and say, no, it isn't. You must have misheard that. Are you sure he said that? He didn't say that. I sat next to her. Cognitive dissonance. And then she's just like, what, are you defending the homosexuals? Like, ah. So, what if I am? That's not the point. I didn't have a study after that, and I backflipped out of there. That was also when I found out about the childhood sex abuse scandals. And then everything made sense. So, you know how the Catholic Church has that priest problem that they try to keep hush hush? Jehovah's Witness has that same problem. Oh, yes. So basically, they have members that they know are pedophiles, that they have records of every complaint against them, stored in their nice little headquarters at Warwick. But they won't release these. And you're not supposed to go to the police when something of this matter pops up. And not only that, you have to have 2 witnesses to the event. So, if one of the elders touched you as a child, and there's no one else around to see it, tough luck. Jehovah will take care of it. We can't do anything, and you can't call the cops on another brother, because why would you do that? You're shaming the Jehovah's Witnesses. And then it makes sense. They have this huge problem of pedophiles in their religion. Look up the Australian Royal Commission. They got in trouble with the Australian government over this, and they have like this whole investigation. It's boring, but fascinating at the same time at the mental gymnastics these men pull off. So, of course, they don't teach about consent to children. If the kids think it's their fault, they're not going to tell anybody. And given that a lot of the men that do this are elders, do you think they want them to tell people? Because what if they get a Jehovah's Witness parent that will go to the police? There's also a line in one of their children's books, Learn from the Great Teacher, that basically goes, there are pedophiles. If they touch you, you could become gay and be a pedophile too. That's the paragraph. This is what they're teaching children. This is what I heard. Do you know how hard I freaked out when I read that? So hard because, oh my god, I'm going to turn gay. Oh my god, I'm going to turn into a pedophile. And yeah, I'm gay. The gay happened long before any of the other stuff. Looking back, I was not straight and didn't realize it. So, after I learned about that is when I officially cut ties. Completely. Washed my hands of the religion. I only go to the Kingdom Hall once a year because my mom gets really sad if I don't. And that's for their Passover. I go in, I sit, I leave. And that's my story. And it's hard. It's hard for me to tell. This is the first time I'm actually telling it all the way through. And it may not be. You know what? It is as dramatic as some of the others. Because no child should have to feel like God hates them. No child should have to feel dirty for something that was done to them. I keep telling myself my story isn't worth telling because it's not bad enough. But suffering is not a race. So even if you aren't disfellowshipped, even if you aren't cut off, if something happened that traumatized you, you are valid. You have a right to leave. You have a right to find out who you are. You have a right to overcome your trauma. Because that's what I'm doing. I can talk about it. And that is a huge step for me. I can tell you all about my story because I got help from BetterHelp.com. No, no, no. Not sponsored. I found a local therapist who was willing to work with me that was in my price range. I live somewhere in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia, not telling you where. But if you're in the state of Virginia, if you are under a certain income level, if your local mental health care facility has interns, they don't pay interns, which I have issues with that, but that means you can get you some therapy for free, which is what I did. Also in Virginia, there is the GAP program. If you are 21 years of age or older, have severe mental problems to the point where it's a disability, they will find a way to get you some insurance. And they recently opened up the Medicaid program to 400,000 more people, including me, so I have insurance now. My point is, there are resources out there if you look hard enough. Look out for your local resources. Find you a good therapist that will understand and talk to them. Talk about it. Talk about it on the internet. Scream into the void of your blog. Just get it out. You don't have to hold it in here, because that just leaves it to fester. And that's not healing. You deserve to heal. I deserve to heal. The other mods deserve to heal. Everyone does. And I guess that's the message of this video. You can overcome it. I'm still in therapy for trauma related to the religion, trauma related to the abuse. But it's getting better every day. So yeah, you can get better too. And I guess that's the video. I hope you all enjoy it. Bye.